Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is your friendly neighborhood IT girl, Sierra, and today we're going to do a deep dive into my software development degree in minutes. So if you are on your own educational journey, or if you're learning programming, or if you're learning coding, or if you're doing anything that is enriching yourself for the better, feel free to give this video a like, comment, and subscribe so we can all support each other on our journeys. And without further ado, let's jump into my degree. Okay, so welcome back to my desk area, and obviously you guys can see just how many blankets I keep around because I get kind of cold. So now let's talk about my schooling experience. All right, so I started Western Governors University back in June of 2020, like kind of smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, and I had a lot of time on my hands at that point. So for that first semester, I did a total of 63 competency units. So the first class that I took was obviously orientation. We're not going to count that because who does? All right, so now we're going to go through the rest of these. I don't think that they're listed in the correct order, but we're just going to go in the way that they're on there. So number one was network and security foundations. It covered widely used categorical classifications of networks like LAN, MAN, WAN, WLAN, PAN, SAN, CAN, and VPN. And that was basically what that class was. I don't know if this is the one where I had to take CompTIA. Honestly, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't remember which class correlated to which certification, but I will tell you at the very end all the certifications that I got. Next class, scripting and programming foundations. And so this class was basically, if I recall it correctly, it was just kind of like learning the very basics of coding and how to, declare variables and what variables even are. This is definitely one of the classes that I passed in like a day because it was very simple and it was stuff that I already kind of had looked at when I pre-gamed my education. After that, we went to data management foundations, and that was where we learned how to use SQL, and where I also learned that SQL was pronounced sequel and not squall like I thought it was, because I had just been reading this word for forever and I thought it was squall, and then I learned it was SQL. All right, coming in hot after that was Business of IT Project Management, which was a fun class. Like I enjoyed this class, and it was essentially just learning about the different kinds of ways to do project management, like the foundations of how to do that. And this course was the one where I took CompTIA Project Plus, so I do know that because it says it here and it reminded me. Then came software engineering, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really remember what this class was about. I know it was about software engineering, but I don't remember what specifically we learned. Actually, no, okay, I do remember this class. This was a class, I think, where we had to make like our development brief for our company, and it was really just helping us get accustomed to how you would write things for software and how you would pitch stuff to a company. So that was what this class was. Okay, so then we have the Mac Daddy mother of all courses, which was operating systems. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hated operating systems because this class was so robust. You covered everything about like almost all operating system. It was Windows. You had to know all the Windows, like starting from the very first Windows up to Windows 10. And I mean, it focused mostly on Windows 10, but you had to know all of them. And then additionally, you had to know Mac, and then you had to know also Linux and all the different versions of that. And then how basically each operating system was laid out and how each one changed each time there was a new release. I did not like that. It was just a lot. You went way into depth, and this touched on data structures and algorithms. I mentioned the Manesh Shikar video that I watched when I was taking this class before, and so that was why I watched that for this course, because it was just so much information. This class took so long, and now it's gone. Now I know the school doesn't even have this class anymore. I think it's been replaced with a data structures and algorithms class. So I mean, good for you guys. If you guys are going there now, you lucked out. After that, we took data management applications, I think. Is that what it is? Yeah, data management applications, and I actually really like that. This is where we got into MySQL, and we actually put MySQL onto the computer, and then we were able to make little queries in SQL. And this was a performance assessment, I believe, at the end, where you had to go through and make different queries using SQL in a sort of playground atmosphere for your performance assessment. Fun times. All right, introduction to IT. This one I do remember taking earlier, so like I said, I don't think this is in actual correct order, but this was a class where we really kind of learned what IT was, like, at all.
What exactly does IT stand for? I've often wondered, but I never thought to ask.
And just FYI, in case you didn't know, it's information technology. So that's what this class was, just kind of telling you just a general overview of IT. Following that, we slipped right into IT foundations, and that one was the intro to CompTIA. So that was like CompTIA A+ Part 1, Core 1. And this is kind of where my brain died a little bit, just because I didn't like that information. However, I did learn to like it based upon how I went about learning it, which you can see in this video here. Yeah, that's the right side, right? Here. And then obviously, no big surprise here, we lead into IT applications, which is your CompTIA A+ Core 2. So I took that, and that really just rounded out my CompTIA A+ certification. Next on the list was organizational behavior and leadership. And honestly, I remember this class specifically because I really enjoyed it. I liked that it was basically just talking about how people can become tyrants, essentially, and the differences between having a lot of power and being watched when you have that power, and then being not watched when you have that power. And I remember it talked specifically about some sort of study they had done in Britain, where they took a bunch of normal people and then they let them essentially inhabit a prison, and they split them up into two groups. They split a group into like the guards, and then you had the other group be split into prisoners, and they let them, I think in the beginning, go about being unmonitored. Like, they didn't have any cameras on them or anything like that. They let them just be, and then they put cameras on them, and they realized the huge difference that it has in how people wield power when they're being watched versus when they're not being watched. And the people who were made to be the guards, they realized just how mean they could be to people when they had this power and they weren't being monitored. So it really kind of brought to light human nature and the way people interact and stuff like that. I thought it was fascinating. Honestly, it was more of a psychology class to me than anything than just like behavior and leadership, but I just thought it was fascinating. Okay, then we have one of my other favorite kind of classes. We did the web development foundations and then applications, two separate courses. In foundations, we focused on HTML and CSS, and I guess that was number one. And then in applications, we moved into, I guess, more HTML and CSS, and then added a little JavaScript in there because web dev, you can't do without JavaScript. It's, you know, it is what it is. You gotta get in that JavaScript. I actually don't think that, it says that we make a website on this. Maybe they do now, but I don't think we made a website. I think we prototyped something in these classes. I think that's what we did, and we learned how to use InVision. We utilized InVision to do like a working prototype, and that was what those two classes were. All right, next came user interface design, and this was another class that I liked it, but it was challenging for me. So this is where I got my CIW user interface designer certification, and that one, actually I could make a separate video on that because I did some things that might be helpful to some other people to get past that one quicker as well. So look out for that video. Maybe there will be a link up here as well. Okay, so then we got into the actual coding courses. I kind of put all my coding and programming courses at the very end, just because I got through, like, order of operations told me like getting through the memorization ones would be a lot simpler. So I did all those first and then went into the programming classes. So at the very end, I took scripting and programming applications, which is where you had to design a program that was essentially like kind of automated based on just like you coding it. It wasn't like AI, I didn't use like Lambda or anything, it wasn't cloud-based or anything like that, but it was something that you would program in C++, which for me at the time seemed stupid because I was in the Java track and I was like, I don't want this, but it's useful. So I did that in C++ and it was cool. I'm not gonna lie, I did need some help on that one because the theoretical knowledge that I had gotten like I said, just not really doing very much programming in the school prior to that point didn't really translate immediately. So I did like do a lot of one-on-one help with my instructors and stuff to make sure that I was learning properly. After that, we moved into my absolute final course, which was Software 1 that I took for this semester. And at that point, I was struggling. Like I said, the theoretical knowledge was kind of not, it wasn't being applied easily for me. Like it just wasn't clicking. So I had to take some time, and I was like, okay, let me focus on this with an instructor. And I don't think the instructor and I were gelling that well at that point, and I was tired. I had done a lot. I was very tired. So I said, hey, you know what? Screw it. I've done a lot. So I had attempted 69 credits for that semester. That was a 6-credit class, that Software 1, and I was like, meh, I've done enough. It's okay. I'll just let the couple of days that we had left lapse for the semester, and I was like, I'll come back and finish the rest. So that's what I did. That was my first semester, completed the 63 units, and then kind of let this one class die off for that time period. All right, so moving into my second semester, whatever you want to call it, I picked back up with my Software 1 class, which is where you were building a Java project that was kind of it was non-persistent storage. So that was what it was, and I passed that one finally. And this was a time where I was, like I said, I was pretty tired because I had done a lot of things that, you know, life still goes on and everything. So I decided, I was like, I only need to complete 12 competency units. So I started off with my 12 competency units, and so I did Software 1, and then I did Software Quality Assurance. So this is where you kind of learn what quality assurance is and how to do that. Different types of testings, you know, all the different hats and things like that. And then my last class that I took was Advanced Data Management, and that class focused on like being able to discern whether or not you should be using a data lake, a data warehouse, writing more complex queries in SQL, and just really learning how backend kind of works better and how you can manage it better. Also, how lucrative data, just knowing data analysis and how to work with that sort of information is, and also how to keep it safe. So that's what that class was. That was my last class that I took in that semester. And like I said, because I was so tired, I had finished that in I think the first just 2 months or whatever. And I was like, we're tired, we're done, we're gonna take a break. And so I took like a 4-month break after that and did absolutely nothing. I did absolutely nothing with school. I did a lot of other things, but I did absolutely nothing with school. Okay, so then I came back for my last term, and we had 3 classes to go. So I took Software 2 is what I started with, and during this time, this is when if you guys have seen my other videos, this is where I talked about me coming back and literally knowing nothing because I had taken that 4-month period off, and so I came back and I was like, what are words? I had to then go back and spend like a month relearning all the stuff that I had learned before. I had to go back. I think I reread a couple of the textbooks, and I rewatched a boot camp that I had gotten on Udemy. After having wasted that month, then around September, I really got started with my courses, and I got into Software 2, which was another Java project that you had to build that used persistent data. So you had to have a back end on it, and we worked with MySQL, and we used a relational database. So after that initial period of just general struggle because I knew nothing, what I did was I pre-scheduled a bunch of meetings with my instructor. And I didn't love my instructor for this course, I'm not gonna lie. So I kind of decided, because we're not gelling the way that I would like us to gel, we had the opportunity to use different instructors at this point. It wasn't like you had to use the same instructor anymore. You could use all the different instructors. So I branched out and I used a couple of different instructors. I will mention them by name also, just in case you guys want to use them, because they're wonderful. And if you guys want me to take your name out later, just let me know if you see this. But Professor Berwick, I think that she's wonderful. She was very relatable in the way that she delivered the information. Mark Kincaid, who does a lot of the WGU video series that you see, I spoke with him. Honestly, the one thing that my program mentor at that time, this is the program mentor that I left, did that I thought was beneficial was introduce me to him, and he was wonderful. All the stupid mistakes that I made that I couldn't figure out what was going on with my code, like he actually took the time to chat with me about it. I could send him my actual code and he would read through it and see what it was that I was doing that was stupid, and he would be like, you know, in the nicest way possible, not being mean to me or anything, but he would tell me like, hey, this is what's going on, and this is how you would fix this, and this is why this is happening. Because my whole thing was I wanted to know why what I was doing was wrong, you know? It's one thing to be told like, oh, you've done this incorrectly, here's how you do it correctly, but you need to understand why you're doing the things that you're doing wrong, so that you don't continue to do them, and so that you know why you should choose a different way to do them. So Professor Kincaid was really, really helpful in that, and just made figuring that out a lot simpler. Also, Professor Ruiz, who I spoke with a couple of times as well, he was the one who started getting me to use utility classes and making my code just a little bit more dry in that respect, because I was like, well, why would I do that? You know, like, why wouldn't I just have several different pages here? It makes sense. I'm working on this thing on this page. Why wouldn't I have it on that page? And then when I use this page, like, let me have it there. Because I don't know, like, honest, to be totally transparent with you guys, I was like, I don't know how to merge these things together. Like, no one's taught me how to do that yet. I don't understand what you're talking about. And so he was like, no, girl, like, this is what you do. This is how this works. And this is why you should do that, because you're going to make things way more complicated for yourself if you don't. So I highly recommend getting in touch with any or all of those people if you're struggling, and they should help you quite a bit. All right, so we're here at my last two courses, and the last two that I took were the mobile applications. And additionally, one thing that I will say that I learned, because I don't think that I want to do a separate video on this one, but when you have to take dates, this was a stupid mistake that I made that I literally couldn't figure out for a good while. So when you have to take dates and transfer them to make a broadcast of what you're, you know, trying to notify people about, you have to add one. And again, I talk about having to be good at math because math is sneaky and it shows up in the smallest ways that you don't really think are that significant, but are super significant to your project in the end run. So you have to add one to dates to kind of make them work properly in Android. And I was adding one, but for whatever reason, my mind kept thinking, oh, this is going to be 13 at a certain point, because you know, you have January's 1 up to December, which is 12, and then if you add 1, that's 13. But that's not the way it works, and I don't know why I was so stuck on that. So I made this whole, like, all these different cases that pertain to the fact that if the date ever made it to 13, which messed up like a bunch of my code, but it would work sometimes. Like, it would work sometimes, obviously, because you don't hit 13 that often, and I don't know. So I wasn't seeing the bug, but they were seeing the bug, and I was like, well, I can't fix it if I can't see it. So eventually I figured it out, but that was the worst thing ever, having to like figure out what that bug was, and the fact that I was just adding an extra one when I didn't need to add an extra one, because that's not really the way that dates correlate. You got to put the extra one in there, but it doesn't work that way, if that makes sense. I don't know. My absolute final class that I took was my capstone class, and like I said, I have had some of the best mentors, and my mentor, the last one that I had, which was wonderful, told me when I was beginning my last term, he was like, hey, once you get past that software 2 class, he was like, just know that you can kind of reuse that. You just have to build upon it a little bit. You got to add these 2 things. And he's like, but you don't have to make a totally different project if you don't want to. So I didn't. I reused my software 2 project, and I just added on the 2 different things that I needed to add on to make that work. And, you know, obviously, additionally, you have to do all this documentation on there as well. So that was really what took the most amount of time, like a full weekend, essentially. I remember I started it on a Friday, and I was done definitely by Monday, submitted it. But that was the most trying bit, the documentation, because you have to go through it and you have to explain each and every thing that your project does, and you know how it works, and if somebody runs into this issue, like what to do, and blah, 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 if they're trying to do this, like how you do that. So much documentation. But I mean, obviously this is what we do, so it was super useful to realize, like, hey, if I build a really, really, really big project, I'm going to have to write a lot of about it. So that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me get my software developer degree from WGU, Western Governors University. Yeah, at the very end, like I said, I got, let me see what it says here. I got my CompTIA Project Plus, I got my CompTIA A Plus, my ITIL 4 Foundations, and my CIW User Interface Designer certification. So that's what I left with. Those are the classes that I took. Again, I think even now, if you went to WGU now, it's even better because you actually get to take those data structures, algorithm courses. They're part of your program now. So thanks guys, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.